name's Paula Town. I'm a cancer champion officer at Pioneering Care Partnership, and I'm here today to talk about prostate cancer. Prostate cancer affects around over 55,000 men a year. Anyone born male is at risk, so that includes transgender men and non-binary people. People who are more at risk are those over 50, those with a family history of prostate cancer and breast cancer, and Black men. Symptoms of prostate cancer usually aren't visible until the prostate cancer has spread or grown significantly. Symptoms are such as problems urinating, as in needing to go to the toilet more often, pain when urinating, feeling like you need to go a lot, getting up in the night, blood in semen. If anyone has symptoms such as anything like that, then they really need to get to see the doctor to be checked out. Of course, this also can be a sign of an enlarged prostate, so it's really important to get checked out to have things ruled out. So today I'm here with Terry, Bytheway, and we're here to talk about prostate cancer. Terry has been living with prostate cancer now for 9 years, and he's a real big ambassador for helping get the word out about prevention and signs and symptoms of prostate cancer. So Terry, you've been living with prostate cancer now for 9 years. So when did you first notice that you'd got any symptoms?
Well, it would probably be in 2016, which was just before I was actually diagnosed. And it took the form of going to the toilet during the night time. I'd have to make several trips, which was totally different for me. I'd never had that problem before. Even having to drink beforehand, the night before, I still managed to sleep through the night. But I noticed that was one of the first things. However, I just, like all men do, said, well, it's because I'm getting old. But that's a well-known sort of excuse that men use. I just put it off. I didn't go and see the doctor. And this was several months later. And then I got what I'd call a red flag. And I noticed that there was actually blood in my semen. And I thought, well, that definitely is, not normal. So I made an appointment to see the doctor. Now, it took me about 2 weeks to get an appointment, but nevertheless, got to see the doctor. And when I went in to see the doctor, I told the doctor about my condition. And she said, well, okay, I'm going to send you for a blood test. It's called a PSA blood test. At the time, I didn't have a clue what a PSA blood test was. But apparently, PSA is prostate-specific antigens. Now, they normally stay within the prostate, which is a small, about size of a walnut, just below the bladder. And it's part of the man's reproduction system. Also, it has the urethra, which goes right through the middle of it. So it controls waterworks as well. I went and I got a phone call that night. And I thought, well, this is unusual. Can we see you tomorrow? Considering it took me 2 weeks to get an appointment, actually then finding out I had another appointment the next morning was ringing the alarm bells. And I went to see the lady who was the lady doctor. And she said to me, your PSA was 32.4. And I hadn't a clue what that meant. She said that the PSA should be 4 or less for a man. And if it's higher than that, then obviously they need to look at finding out what the issues are. Because normally, as I say, the prostate holds the PSAs within it, keeps it healthy, etc. But if the prostate, for any reason, is under pressure, then it releases more of this PSA into the bloodstream, and then it's picked up in a blood test. She said, I'm going to refer you to the hospital. And I was referred to James Cook. And they have a government sort of thing, which they say has to be done within 2 weeks. And thankfully it did. Within 10 days, I got a referral and I went to see them. And this was coming up to Christmas now. And they said, okay, they did a DRE, which is a digital rectum examination, but a lot of men are afraid of that. They don't want it, don't happen. But it's what it does. It identifies if it's smooth and how big it is. See whether it's got enlarged or what have you. And that's what the DRE does. Anyway, did that. They looked at my blood sample, and they said, "Well, right, going on this, we think that there is a good chance that you have prostate cancer, but we're going to do a biopsy first." So they said, "We have tomorrow. We have an opportunity to do it." So I didn't have time to think about it. I just okay, yeah, go do it. And I had the biopsy then, and then it was getting into towards Christmas. So all Christmas I had to tell my friends and family that there was nothing wrong. I didn't mention the fact that I'd been or what the issue was, because I didn't want to spoil their Christmas. But at the back of my mind and my wife's mind was the fact that there is an issue, but we had to hold that within ourselves. In between Christmas and New Year, I went back for the results, and they said the results from the biopsy show that 8 of the 10 samples I took from the prostate were cancerous, which is not good. They told me my Gleason score was 7. I won't go into the details of that, but just basically it's like how much cancer you have. 10 being the worst, 6 being on the borderline of whether or not you have cancer. But I was 7, so it wasn't too bad. But at the same time, I did have the cancer. So now what we have to do is have 2 further scans to find out whether or not the prostate has maintained the cancer within it, or whether it's escaped. And so I had an MRI, and then I had a bone test, a bone scan. The bone scan is where they put like a fluid into you, which has a radioactive element to it, and then that highlights in your body any areas where the cancer might have gone. Anyway, again, went into the new year, and again did the same with the family, big family parties and that, and said nothing, because we didn't want to tell them until we were absolutely sure what the whole situation was. So anyway, had that test done, and the scans come up, and and I'll never forget, 11th of January 2017, I was wheeled into this examination room with the doctor, and my wife came with me, and then there was a nurse as well. Now, you always know there's going to be like an issue because we both had somebody with us. And he said, "I'm awfully sorry to tell you, Mr. Bytheway, but your prostate cancer has spread, and you have a tumour on your left hip and a tumour on the back of your skull." And he said, because of that, it is incurable and it's terminal. Now, my wife only heard that, and of course she broke down straight away, started crying. The nurse helped her, tried to console her, but she was basically she was shaking with tears. I was a lot more matter of fact. I just turned to the doctor and said, "Okay, then, how long have I got?" And he said, "Terry, we've got treatments which will keep you alive, not just for months, but for years." I said, "Great. When can I start?" He said, "We can do a treatment now." I said, "Let's do it then." And then he sent the nurse off to get some hormone treatment, which they injected with me with, to start my, if you like, my journey. My wife found it really difficult to come to terms with. When we told the family, they were obviously shocked. My grandson cried uncontrollably, and it was a big thing. I think when people think about cancer, they think about death.
They do, yeah.
Immediately, it's like, that's it, I'm dying. My thought process was totally different. My thought process was, okay, I've got this, I've got treatments which I'm going to carry on with, and I'll go through whatever I have to do to try and at least control this disease, which is what I did. They put me through 6 sessions of chemotherapy. Now, I'm not going to make chemotherapy out to be the elixir of life, but it's quite hard and it's quite aggressive. But I managed to get through it. I went through my 6 sessions. I lost my hair because one of the issues about chemotherapy is it attacks a lot of cells, which are good cells, not just the cancer. So I lost my hair, which was quite strange. It was about 12 days into the treatment, and I walked over to the dustbin, and I went like that, and I and I wasn't pulling. I was just like placing the hair off my head into the bin, which felt really weird. But the first time I walked past the mirror, I had quite a shock. What was that? Oh, it was me, you know. And people said, "Oh, actually, you don't look too bad, bald." I said, "Well, don't get used to it because it's coming back." In fact, when it came back, it's called the chemo curl. Yeah, it's just a temporary thing. It happens, you know. But what it did, it brought my PSA down from 34 right the way down, 32, right the way down to 0.2, which was a massive, massive, reduction. And I was happy with that. Kept on taking the treatments, which was hormone treatment. The reason the hormone treatment, just to give you an idea, what it does, it stops you from producing testosterone because testosterone feeds the cancer. So if you stop that, then you stop the cancer from growing. The cancer has nowhere to go. It just basically, it just goes to sleep, if you like mine has for the last 9 years. And I've had a great time. 9 years of absolutely, because I got the idea, okay, I've got this cancer and I know I've got it for life, but I'm not going to let it do any more than damage than it already has done. And the last thing I want to do is brood and worry about what it can do and what it can't do. What I'm going to do is enjoy every single day. Why not? Let's look at that sunshine. Let's go and see a walk on the beach. Let's see the sunset and the sunset rise. They're beautiful things. And when you're actually given like a terminal diagnosis, it makes you totally reevaluate your life. Your life changes totally. And things that used to bother me didn't bother me anymore. And things that were important to me, family, friends, enjoyment, life, loving, that came to the fore. And my life changed. I did all sorts of things I thought I'd never do. I always wanted to tread the boards, go do a show. And I always put myself off by saying, "Oh, what happens if I fall over? What happens if I forget my words?" So because I'd had that diagnosis, it didn't matter anymore. I was going to do it. That's it. I'm going to do it. So within a year, I was 2017 when I had my treatment. 2018, I was actually on stage for the first time in Middlesbrough Theatre doing Anything Goes, a musical. And I loved it. And I thought, I love this. So I've done 7 shows since then, I joined choirs. I joined 3 choirs. I had to take one off because I was doing too much. I was in 3 theatre groups. I had to drop one of them, but I'm still in 2. And I'm absolutely loving it. And all sorts of things I did. I learned to play a musical instrument. Never, ever played a musical instrument because when I was at school, the only thing it gave me is a triangle. And I think even then I got the beat at the wrong time. So they never let me. And I thought, well, why not try? What have I got to lose? So I tried with a ukulele, went on to a banjolele, and I love playing it, And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, why didn't I do this before? And all these things, I'm doing now, which I could have done before, but what happened was that diagnosis, which changed my life. So I've had a great time. I've done loads of holidays that we've done. We go on holiday whenever we can. Obviously, one of the issues is the insurance. And I'm sure anybody with prostate cancer will understand that. But again, there are insurance companies that actually do take it into consideration and give you a reasonable amount. So, I've done that. I've done everything. Even during lockdown, when we had COVID, I could have gone way down. I could have thought, this is ruining my life. What life I've got. I don't know how many years I've got, but I'm stuck inside of 4 walls What am I going to do? I thought, I'm not going to waste it. I want to experience life. So what did I do? I learned how to bake. I'd never done anything like before, but I thought, well, I'll give it a go. And I did all sorts of, I created things which were absolutely fabulous. All, all, all the people said to me, well, can we be a tester? The family was saying, oh, send us some round. I seem to have done really well. And I'm thinking to myself, how has this happened? Because all I was doing was just reading the recipe. I wasn't doing anything different. But anyway, I learned that. Then after that, I thought, well, what else can I do? I'll make some jewelry. I made loads of jewelry, and we're all beautiful. And that it gives you that satisfaction of creating something from nothing. Few beads and a bit of wire or a bit of thread and beautiful things I was producing. I learned it all like everybody does off YouTube.
Yeah.
But hey, I didn't know what to do otherwise. So I learned that and I did that. And all the things I've done, I've had a great life. So the thing is, there is life even with cancer. So it doesn't matter if you're given that terminal, sorry, but, it is terminal. It doesn't matter. What you have to do is take the world by the short and curly and really make it have you. You are now important because you don't know what you've got left. So just enjoy what you have. And I have even given my cancer a name. My cancer is called Colin. Colin the cancer. And I apologize to all Collins out there who may be listening to this, but it means nothing, against Colin. But my Colin is my cancer. I'm going to have him for the rest of the life, so I might as well give him a name. And at the moment, he is fast asleep. He's doing nothing. I had 2 recent scans, said there was no activity at all. So even on the tumours, everything's sort of well under control, and long may it continue. Because I realised that when I was past my 40s, certainly into my 50s, I was having a problem with maintaining an erection. And at the time, I didn't think anything about it. I thought it's pressure, mentally, it's all
Stress.
in the mind. Stress, yeah. It wasn't anything. I certainly didn't think it could have anything to do with any illness, let alone a cancer. But apparently, things of that nature, because the prostate is part of the reproduction system, then it actually can affect a man's sex drive. It can affect a man's, having and maintaining an erection. And these things actually happen. And of course, blood in the semen or blood in the urine is a definite red flag. But the other thing is that erection problem, it could not, don't get me wrong. If you have that issue, it doesn't mean you have got prostate cancer. It could be something else. As I say, it could be like a mental sort of a thing, or it could be another issue. But I know it is one of the things that you should, if you think, am I having, this problem with an erection? Should I see the doctor and get a blood test done? Because that's all it needs, to find out, to go on that journey, to find out whether or not you have prostate cancer or even a prostate issue. Because there are other issues besides the cancer. You've got prostatitis, which is inflammation of the prostate, which is caused by a germ and which can be easily sort of sorted. Obviously, the prostate inflames, but you get antibiotics and that'll clear it.
It is really important that people just go get chatting and not be embarrassed as well. There's actually no screening, is there, for prostate cancer?
No, there isn't. And the reason for that is that the PSA blood test, which is, it provides some information about whether or not you may have prostate cancer, isn't 100% accurate, which means you can have false highs and false lows.
So if you went to your GP, what would be inclined to say, yes, we'll give you the test? What would you be going with and saying to them if they were going to agree? Would it be that you've got a family history? Would it be that your age? Would it be, what do you think?
Yeah, certainly over the age of 50, I think you are entitled to that blood test. And I think certainly if it's in the family, or if you are black, then you're more at risk. So the higher the risk, the more opportunities you should have to have that blood test. But even have no symptoms at all. And I know people that have had no symptoms, and yet eventually they've got prostate cancer. My son-in-law, I told him all about my condition. This is going back a few years now. He went into work, told a couple of the guys, they were in the 60s, early 60s. One of the guys said, "Oh, well, I'm going to see the doctor and you've got a bad back." So he said, "Okay, then why didn't you ask him for a blood test?" He said, "I will do." So he did. He asked him for a blood test. It come back and it was positive. He did actually have prostate cancer. He had no symptoms whatsoever. He would not normally have gone for that blood test. But if he hadn't have done, then his condition would have got worse. And ultimately, it'd have been too late. Now, you talking about a figure, I think it's something like 52,000 men every year are diagnosed. Of that 52,000, 10,000 are too late. That's 20% of men diagnosed with prostate cancer already into advanced.
And that's probably because there's no symptoms.
That's because there's no symptoms. That's because there's no screening program. Something we are trying very hard to try and get is a screening program. So far, the government have refused, but I think it's only a matter of time. Obviously, we had a better test, then we could do that. There are home tests which you can do as well. They range from about £15 to £18, and it's a very similar to one of those tests that you have with the COVID, where you have a little thing.
Street window.
Yeah. But this one, you take a finger prick of blood, take the blood, put it into the, and after, I think it's 15 minutes, it will have 1 or 2 lines. If you've got 1 line, then it's saying that your PSA level is normal. If you have 2 lines, it's saying your PSA is high or higher.
Where would you get that from?
You can buy them online. You can buy them. There's a number of places you can buy these tests. I've got a number of the tests which I use now at the awareness training, and it's if somebody, particularly a gentleman over the age of 50, particularly if he's got issues like he's higher risk, whether he's in the family, whether he's black, then I would encourage them to do the test and just to see whether it is an issue. And these tests are not like you definitely have prostate cancer.
Not conclusive, no.
Because like everything else, PSA, you can have a false high, a false low. Particularly a false high, it's quite obvious because your prostate is part of your reproduction system. If you're having sex a lot and quite recently to having the test, it could be high because your prostate's been under pressure because you've had sex, and therefore to release more PSA into the bloodstream. Because of where the prostate is, when you're sat on a bicycle in the seat, you're working that prostate. The prostate's under a lot more stress than it would have, and it will release more of the PSA into the bloodstream and then be picked up as high, even though if you stop cycling for a couple of days, it'll go back to normal. There is a gene which if identified in a family tree, that gene is called the BRCA gene. Now, the BRCA gene means that in the family, the cancer will occur. With women, it's breast cancer, and the men from the same family will have prostate cancer. Now, my sister had breast cancer, and we went through chemotherapy together. I was in South Tees, she was in North Tees, and we were wondering whether we had the BRCA gene. There is cancer also in mother and father. Mother had breast cancer, father had lung cancer, but he didn't have prostate cancer. But nevertheless, it's in the family. Therefore, we're at risk, and the only way to find out would be for a blood test analysis of those blood tests, because the blood test would have to look at the gene pool, would have to look at the DNA. and then identify whether the BRCA gene was in the family. At the moment, we haven't done that, but it's certainly something to think about. So if within your family, maybe you have a sister that's got breast cancer, or a mother, then there is a chance that you may get prostate cancer. More at risk anyway.
More at risk, yeah. Okay. So you now actually you've set up your own support group, haven't you, for prostate cancer, and you're busy going around getting the word out to anybody who'll listen.
Absolutely, and some people that don't listen, I'll still talk to them. I've become almost like, because I have prostate cancer, because I've been through the process, I know what it's like to go through chemotherapy. I know what it's like to have, all the various tests and that done. I've become almost like a champion, because I don't want that to happen to all men. And if it's caught early enough, then they don't have half as many of the issues that they would have if they leave it until it gets too late. And that's why it's so important for men to be aware of their health. Men are not very good at looking at their own health, or at least keeping it within themselves so they don't talk about it. Women are great talking about things, men not so good. And even all the women that are listening to this, find out, is your husband, your grandfather, your father, do they have issues going to the toilet? Do they have issues with the various things that we've talked about? And if they have, then ask them, have you thought about having a blood test? That's all it takes to start with, is a blood test. Once they've got the blood test, and even if the blood test is wrong, it's a flag. It says we need further investigation. And without that, then we have no starting point. And there are a lot of men, those 10,000 we talk about, who are diagnosed too late every single year, would come down. Therefore, the amount of men that die of prostate cancer would come down also. At the moment, it's scary numbers. One man every 45 minutes dies in the UK of prostate cancer. That is horrendous.
It is, because that's somebody's father,
Absolutely.
Isn't it? Somebody's grandfather, somebody's brother, somebody's husband, somebody's partner, and that's a big loss to families, isn't it?
It is a big loss of families, and if the families don't want that loss, then they need to think about how can we stop that from happening in our family. And it's a simple solution. Get the men checked out with the GP, get that blood test done, and let's see where we are. If we can stop that, we can reduce the number of men dying. That will be a massive improvement in what we have so far. At the moment, prostate cancer is the highest cancer in the UK, overtaking breast cancer, which was for quite a while, overtaking lung cancer, which was for quite a while. But more money has been put into those things. Lung cancer, there's a big smoking campaign, etc. Still is. Breast cancer, there's a lot more women now having tests and what have you, and also being told, educated about identifying for themselves. And with prostate cancer, there's nothing, and this is why, until we can get a screening program up and running, we still need the word out there. It's so important. And as you say, it doesn't just affect the man, it affects a lot more people around him, a whole family who don't want to lose him.
Well, Terry, thank you for speaking to me today. It's been really enlightening and inspiring to see your zest for life. It's, to be honest, you don't look like someone that's living with cancer, because you're just shining. You really are.
Well, thank you. And the thing is, people say to you, very well meaning, saying, well, you've got prostate cancer. It's the best cancer to have. Which I'm thinking, well, is any cancer going to have? And the other thing they say is, well, you're looking really well, considering you've got cancer. And I'm thinking, well, how should I look? Because nobody can see cancer.
No.
It's there, and it could be there for the rest of your life. Nobody can see it. All you can do with people, with men in your family or other families or friends who have prostate cancer, just treat them as normal. That's all they want. They don't want any special treatment. They don't want your sympathy. They just want normality.